Yeah.
Drama all around me, they be DC.
West side.
This time they can't switch sides. A bird's eye when I swear by. Top down, they was not around who I got now. We made champions, yeah. In the trenches, we made champions, yeah. At the bottom, we made champions, yeah. At the bottom,
What's up, folks? We're here with another episode of Live 3 Legendary Podcast. I got my co-host with me, Fresh the Legend, and we got another prominent brother from Philadelphia here today, man. He's a gun violence reduction advocate. He's an attorney. Of all things, he's a father, and this brother is an academic juggernaut with a lot of accolades to his name.
Sir.
So listen, I mean, one of the things I want to point out first is you from West Philly.
Yes, sir.
So, you know what I mean? One of West Philly on, we proud to have you represent this, you know what I mean, that part of the city. Tell me about that, though. What was it like walking the West Philly streets? How'd you go from that to then being who you are today?
Yeah, so I tell people I'm from 58 from Baltimore, and we was just geeking.
Yeah.
Because the first thing people say, oh, you from Southwest?
Yeah, that's the
And
first
it's like,
thing I
don't
said.
disrespect me like that. No disrespect to Southwest, though, because I did spend like 5 of my formative years living up near Pascal Projects on 72nd and Saybrook when my dad and my stepmother were together. Right. But I grew up, my mom and pop, they both from 58th Street. My mom used to live on 58th Street between Christian Street and well, she lived right on the corner of 58th and Montrose. My pop, he from 58th and Christian on the corner of 58th near 59th and Christian. And I mean, West was a transitioning neighborhood. Like where I'm from, that was like a more like working class, upper middle class neighborhood. A lot of people who had federal jobs, postal workers, police officers. And the thing is like, I start my story with my great grandfather his name was President Harden. This some crazy shit.
His first name was President.
His first name was President. It didn't say that on his birth certificate because his parents were slaves. So one of the things that happened with slavery after the slaves were freed, the first thing they did was they started naming their children shit like Mr., Uncle, Auntie, you know what I mean? Like giving them names that were prominent because they had been used to being disrespected, like, you know, giving them bad names. So his parents named him President, but they spelled it on his birth certificate as Preston.
Right.
Because they was like, ain't no Negro gonna be named President. But what ends up happening is he's a World War I veteran. My grandfather, who I always tell people, black people who left the South, they were fleeing racial terror.
Right.
They weren't coming up north for shits and giggles. They were coming up north because they were fleeing lack of economic opportunity, Jim Crow, racial injustice, lynchings, etc.
Yeah.
So I'm starting this long story about West Philly, but you can't tell that story without talking about my grandparents.
Right.
My grandfather comes up, he works at the Barnes Foundation over on, before it got moved downtown, it was an art museum. And he starts a family, he's a World War II vet. My father was a Navy veteran. My uncle was a Navy veteran. So like technically, like we got 3 generations of veterans, you know, with that type of profile for a family in America, you would think that we wouldn't be living in abject poverty.
Right.
But what ends up happening is, you know, crack hit. My mom got a habit, my pop got a habit. My pop came back with habits from the Navy. And then I lived in a neighborhood, I mean, 58th and Christian, my block, Truman. Like all of the legends of West Philly, if you know the dudes that grew up on my block, the dudes that was putting work in, those is my like, I'm 40 now, but them dudes is like 48, 49. So I'm a young boy running around. They just my friends' older brothers or my friends' older cousins. And they the gats of the neighborhood. So I kind of always was like on the porch until maybe, I mean, I got off the porch relatively young, but with my neighborhood, coming off the porch at 14 was late.
Right.
Coming off the porch at 15 was late.
Right.
And what happened was my pop was real intentional. He made sure like all my friends went to Anderson, which is at, you know, 59th or 60th and Cobbs Creek or whatever, 61st and Cobbs Creek. I went to Bryant, which is on 60th and Cedar. It was harder to get in there. We had to lie about my address for me to go there because all the kids that went there, they lived on 61st and Larchwood up in them big houses that was on Cobbs Creek. All their parents had money. Relative, I mean, it wasn't really that much money, but you know, when you living in a neighborhood where it's like, you know, this versus that meant something. Then instead of everybody went to Turner, everybody went to Sayre, I went to Bieber on the north side, went to a science program there. That was because of my academics. I got accepted to Masterman, but my pop was like, I'm not putting my son on the train at 5th grade to go downtown with them. You know, my pop was real nervous about that. And then after Bieber, I went to Central. I went to Central for 3 years, and then between my academics and getting wrapped up and coming off the porch, you know what I mean? And you start paying, I always tell people, the hardest part about growing up in West was that there wasn't really any opportunities for ambitious young men that knew that they were poor. I listened to these stories about Mike Rubin. I listened to these stories about Edelman, who took over the share of the Sixers ownership from Mike Rubin. And they talk about when they went to their bar mitzvahs when they was 16, or when they was getting their money from their families when they was turning 15 and 16, they going to buy, you know, I think Edelman said that he bought his first property with his bar mitzvah money, and Rubin saying he went out and bought dead stock Xavier McDaniel sneakers, $300,000, $400,000 when he was 16 years old. The only opportunity I had to put my intellect to work, to put my hustle to work when I was 16 was to start selling drugs. Either I went and worked at McDonald's and watched the people around me do better than me. And yeah, I realized my mom had a drug problem. So it's like we were in abject poverty. I'm the oldest of 5. Both my grandparents died from cancer. Both my parents died from cancer before they turned 50. I'm literally living in this environment where it's like, I know I'm poor. And it's like, I know I'm smart. But the best I could do is go be the best employee at McDonald's.
Right.
And you can't tell me that that's fair when you talk about the contrast of like, everybody desires autonomy. Autonomy is the idea that I can control my own destiny. And we have this huge, like my defining moment in West Philly was, number one, I did karate. So I did all the sports, but karate was my shit because I got to hit people and not get in trouble. But for me, I think when I look at it as an adult, like I probably would define it differently when I was a young boy, but as an adult, the most important thing that I recognized growing up in the hood was that I was ambitious. I wanted to do what I thought my intellect would take me to do. And I was stifled by that. And the only opportunity, I mean, the math wasn't hard. Like you sit and you start selling coke, or you start selling weed, or you start selling drugs, and you start looking at the math versus the risk, and you're like, oh, this ain't even a question,
right?
You know, given everything. The thing is that after a while, you kind of become a part of that lifestyle. It's like I used to tell people I watch Paid in Full every day for 4 years, because if you're an achiever, every day for 4 years, I can tell you the whole movie. I can literally start the movie from the beginning with the first words to the end. I could probably just spit the whole movie. But the reason I say that is because the same way when I practice law and when I'm giving advice to my mentees practicing law, I say to them like, yo, who do you want to be when you grow up?
Right.
Who's the best at what you do? And it's like important that like I tell folks that like, even when I was a hustler, I would be like, who's the best hustler? And I was like, well, I want to be better than that.
Not to cut your wisdom, because
no, you good. Keep going. Cut me off.
All right, because you went to law, and I want to, before we even get to law, because you said a couple things. You went to a neighborhood. You said a neighborhood school in Southwest. I'm not really sure the name of it.
I ain't go to no neighborhood school. I never went to a neighborhood school. That's what I'm saying.
No,
the thing is, my pop would send me away from the neighborhood schools to make sure that I didn't go to school with my friends. So for middle school, I went to Bieber, which is on the north side. That's 58th and Malvern.
Is that a neighborhood school?
No. I mean, it's a neighborhood school for people that's from that neighborhood. But for me, I mean, I'm getting on the G every morning, an hour before school. I catch the G at 58th and 56th and Christian. That's gonna take me to 58th and Malvern. Essentially, put it like this: I'm going from 58th and Baltimore to Overbrook.
So my question for you is, I think it's amazing how you went to Beaver, but you could have went to Masterman, and then you went to Central, like, how did you get intelligent? Because if you're in the hood and you was exposed to these things, where did you get the intellect from?
No, I mean, I think that's like a misnomer. I mean, what
that word mean? I'm sorry.
It's so cool. No, a misnomer is the idea that like people think like, oh, where did you learn the basics of education? And it's just like, no, I mean, most of us grew up in at least where I was at. I grew up in a 3-parent household. I give all my educational credits to my grandmother, Verpeline. Like back then, if you was 65, you was retired, and I got picked up every day from school by 3 o'clock by my grandmother, and I sat at that kitchen table and did my homework until it was done. And I ate whatever she cooked until it was done. And I was joking with my daughter the other day. I didn't get a question wrong on a test until 8th grade because it was just like that's natural somewhat, but most of it was just that like I've always been aggressive, ambitious. That's who I am.
It was innate.
So
It was